Hello and welcome to Football Voices, an SNN Sports Scottish football podcast. I'm Aidan Gilbride and joined alongside me is my co-host, Jack Cranmer.
Delighted to be here, Aidan. Excited to get into the first episode.
Absolutely, we're just off the back of quarter-final League Cup, the Premier Sports Cup. What did you make of all of the results?
Well, it kind of went as expected. There was a lot of people predicting maybe an upset at Firhill. Celtic kind of quashed that without being overly brilliant. Rangers finally beat a Premiership team as we come close to Halloween. St Mirren get a penalty win, and Motherwell heaped more misery on Aberdeen, who look to be struggling a lot. No big surprises, but still an exciting weekend all round.
No, I would say no real surprises. However, if I'm being perfectly honest, I think it shows the current state of Rangers, but it also shows the current state of Hibs and the good feeling around Hibs that I think a lot of people thought Hibs were going to win that match.
Oh, I had it on our website that I had Hibs as my favourites to win the cup after the draw was made, so that shows my confidence going into the game.
Yeah, and I think that goes a long way to show what David Gray's actually built at that team in their summer transfer window, and I'm sure they can build off it. But I think it shows a lot that people favoured them going to Ibrox, and I think it shows a lot about the place that Rangers are in right now, that people thought Hibs were going to go there and win.
Well, we've seen a lot better Hibs teams go to Ibrox in the Cup and win 3-0. I think there's been a few occasions that's happened, and the difference in this Hibs team from this time last year is incredible, and it's a credit to David Gray what he's managed to do there after such a tough start.
No, absolutely, and you look at, I guess, the other matches, so St Mirren and Motherwell. I have to say, you were obviously doubting yourself about, you predicted Hibs to win the Cup. I thought Motherwell would have a really difficult season, and I have to say I've been very pleasantly surprised by the football that they're playing. Yes, okay, they haven't won a game yet, but they haven't lost a game either. And they obviously beat, a fellow top division side to get onto those semi-finals, and I think they've got to feel very good about making the final now.
And I think on the opposite side, you've got Aberdeen, who last year obviously won the Scottish Cup, and at this point last year, I'd won pretty much every game. We're going toe-to-toe with Celtic, and now the bottom of the league alongside Rangers. That's two of your heavy hitters down the bottom, and there's already some questions about Jimmy Tulline, despite the season they had last year, because after that initial run, even though they won the Cup, the second half of that season was really poor, and that looks to be continuing into this year.
No, I know. This time last year, like you said, they were title challengers, and now we're looking at a situation that they're, right at the bottom of the league, and people are joking about the potential chance that by next Sunday that Rangers could be sitting bottom of the league. I can't see Aberdeen winning a game right now the way they're playing.
No, I think while Rangers could improve, I think Aberdeen may struggle this year. I think there could be a fact that they won the Cup, and that is the tip in the mountain point.
Almost a drop off.
Yeah, and it might just be subconscious in the players, but after that big high, it must be quite hard to get yourself back up and go again for another season.
No, so for Aberdeen it was quite a disappointing result, but I don't think it's anything that people didn't expect. I think people thought Motherwell would go through, and credit where credit is due for Motherwell. They're playing some lovely football right now, and I think it's set up quite a cracking semi-final with St Mirren, who I have to say, Stephen Robinson, what he has built that squad in the last couple of years. You saw the celebrations on the pitch afterwards. There is such a good feeling amongst the fans. There's a synergy there.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, the unity in St Mirren is something else. The community has all come together. You've seen that their attendances have went up. Obviously, they're not giving the two stands to Rangers and Celtic, but they're selling it out. I mean, they're selling the tickets. They're constantly going for that top six. Stephen Robson's a great manager, and I would have loved to have him at Rangers had Russell Martin obviously left. A lot of people say Derek McInnes, but I think Stephen Robson, he works with the tools he's got. He builds a squad above their capabilities on paper, and he seems like a manager that you would run through brick walls for.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. I know a couple of St Mirren fans, and they absolutely adore Stephen Robinson, and I really do like what they've built there. When you go to St Mirren Park and you're in the stadium, you can tell that it doesn't matter who's there. They will give you a game, and I think Celtic and Rangers in the last couple of years, they don't like going there.
No,
they don't like going there, and it became one of those stadiums, and I think you have to give all the credit to Stephen Robinson and what he's built there.
Definitely. I think he's probably you could probably include the Old Firm managers, but I'd say he's probably the best manager in the league with the tools he's got building above their station.
Absolutely. And then you look at, obviously, both sides of the Old Firm. You mentioned it was quite easy days for Celtic. I was at the match myself, doing media, and for me, I think it still wasn't vintage Celtic, but I think that you saw the gulf between Championship and Premiership there on display. Celtic really only got out of second gear for a brief kind of 10-20 minute period where they looked really dangerous, but other than that, it was just they capitalised on a series of defensive errors, but I think back to winning ways, and I think that's the difference right now between Celtic and Rangers. Celtic aren't playing incredibly good, but they're still winning.
But that's that muscle memory from winning year on year. Even when you're not at your best and the squad's got poorer, they're still able to grind out the wins. And I think this is probably the worst Celtic team I've seen probably since Ronnie Dyler was in charge, especially on paper anyway. But because they've won so much over the last 10 years, they've still got that muscle memory to get things over the line. They're not great. They kind of remind me of Michael Beale's Rangers, where they're winning, but they're not overly impressive. And you're just kind of waiting for them to get a big test. Probably we had the Almaty game and the Old Firm game, both obviously 0-0 draws. You worry if they come up in Europe with a really tough match that their sort of shortcomings could come undone.
No, absolutely, because even at the weekend, there was a couple of defence errors. Celtic still look incredibly shaky at the back, and I just think that's when you immediately think about Europe. You immediately think, how will this defence respond when they actually are put under pressure, proper pressure? For Rangers, we'll touch on that now. Is this a stay of execution, or is it something that he can build on, Russell Martin?
I don't know, which is a great answer to give. It needs to be the start. It needs to be the start. They can't go out even on Thursday and draw with Genk or draw with Falkirk in 2 weeks or scrape by against Livingston. This needs to be a launching point. They need to go out and need to get in a run of results, because Russell Martin is not going to get these fans off his back by winning 2 games against Livingston and Falkirk. This needs to be a sustained win and run, because I'll go back to Michael Beale again. He won 4 or 5 games in a row after losing to Celtic in the first Old Firm game, then lost to Aberdeen and he was gone because the fans were just waiting for that defeat. And it's the same here. They can win the next 4 or 5 games, but the second you throw away stupid points, they're going to be right on your back again. And Russell Martin is coming really fighting against it, and he really needs to go on a win and run that's something that Rangers haven't done in a long, long time, because it's going to need to be 10, 15 games to get these fans back on side.
Yeah, for me, I don't think he can. I think it's already kind of been decided. I think amongst the fans, at least, they seem to be very united in the fact that they don't want him as the manager anymore. And we find ourselves in such a weird and interesting situation in Glasgow that both sides of green and blue side of Glasgow are not happy with something. Rangers are not happy with their manager, Celtic are not happy with their board, and both sides are not going to let this go. You can tell when you go and you watch them play, there's a toxic kind of atmosphere. I was at Thistle yesterday, at the very beginning of the match, immediately a display. At half time, they were 2-0 up, still a display. Celtic fans aren't going to let this go. They're not happy with the progress in Europe in the last couple of years, and Celtic could go on and be unbeaten to the end of the season, and I don't think they'll let this go.
Yeah, and I can kind of understand the frustrations. They're just doing enough to stay ahead of Rangers, which, if Rangers get their act together, that could cost them. And we've seen that, I think, previously when Rangers won the league under Gerrard, that Celtic took their foot off the gas and Rangers capitalised. And Celtic fans it's all well and good saying, oh, but we're still winning. But the second you stop, you're not in a position to find that extra gear that you need to pull away again. And the squad is being downsized. Brendan Rodgers, I have no hope that he'll be there next season. I think he's waiting out his time. But again, they are still winning. And until Rangers or even Hearts capitalise on that, the Celtic board are going to be able to justify what they're doing.
Yeah, talking about what you mentioned there about Hearts and stuff, obviously we'll kind of try and stay towards the League Cup. We obviously have Motherwell, St Mirren, Celtic and Rangers. Who do you think the final will be?
The Old Firm one is the probably more boring tie, because
yeah, I would agree.
I believe it'll be another turgid, messy, boring affair, because I think both teams will be afraid to lose unless something drastic happens or either team breaks into some sparkling football in the next few weeks ahead of the tie, which will be in the first week in November. Then both teams are going to know if they go out there and lose, they're going to have their fans on their back like that. So I think the St Mirren Motherwell one's the more interesting one, and I think whoever wins that probably will feel we've got a better chance than we normally do of pipping the Old Firm to a trophy, because it's been a while. Was it St Johnstone, the last Old Firm team to win the Scottish Cup 2021?
So the thing is, I think we find ourselves in a very unique situation where that side of the draw, that you could easily see them actually winning. Like, maybe not easily is probably the incorrect word, because if a Celtic or Rangers get to a final, they still are overwhelming favourites. But for me, I think Celtic have such a good record at Hampden, and I just think even with that Scottish Cup loss, I think Celtic will get to the final, and I'm going to go with St Mirren. I think, and I don't think Celtic fans will want to play St Mirren in that final.
No, I don't think Celtic will want to play St Mirren. I don't think anyone will want to play St Mirren. Just the style of team there, you've got big Gogic back, O'Hara, just throughout the team, big physical guys, but they can play football as well. And I think they could give, well, they're never going to be challenging for the league. They can give anyone this league a bloody nose. In terms of the Old Firm game, I mean, I can't call it. Today, I'd say Celtic, over the course, would probably be able to drag it out, but you never. I mean, you could easily see. I mean, you could see someone else in the dugout at Ibrox by the time.
I think you could easily see an extra time and penalties again. To be honest with you, I will say though, Tanecki was a bright spark at Celtic. I think he's the kind of player that Brendan Rodgers wants. He's the kind of player that the fans want. He gets forward. He tries to create chances, and I think he'll be a fan favourite in the coming weeks ahead. But on to other things. Obviously, Thistle were the last Championship side in the Cup. A little bit of news from the Championship that I thought was actually really interesting was Tony Docherty back in management, along with Callum Davidson at the Ross County. I think Ross County have a great setup. I think that's a match made in heaven. I don't know about you.
Yep, on paper looks great, but there's always that issue of too many cooks spoil the broth. These are two guys that have been in management themselves very recently, solo managers. So I don't know, maybe if they'll need to have a joined up thing, but I hope that Ross County are smart enough to sit the two guys down and talk to each other and go over this beforehand. But it is something that's worked for Ross County. I don't know if you recall, Stuart Kettlewell obviously started out as co-manager there, and the other manager's name runs away from me, but he was co-manager there and they were very successful, got into the Premier League, and so it's something that has worked up there, and they are quite similar in style, but it's just, you're wondering, is someone going to take the lead on it? Because how many times in history have you seen this sort of two big, heavy hitter arrangement where one is away within a very short space of time?
Yep, and then touching on some of the other leagues, we've got Stenhousemuir doing really well in, I believe, League 1.
And Inverness as well.
Inverness doing well as well. It seems that kind of that saviour has done them the world of good. And I think everyone wants, there's like a little part of me that are rooting for Inverness Caley Thistle. So I think, that's good to see. In League 2, we've got obviously the newly elected East Kilbride, my hometown. Yeah, listen, I don't think anybody's surprised by what East Kilbride are doing. They were operating like a club that was already in League 2, to be honest, so nobody's really that surprised, but I think they're getting a little bit more of a tough time of it than they were maybe expecting. Yeah,
I was there at the weekend at Cave Park. I do some work with Dumbarton.
So joined alongside us is Partick Thistle Women's set-up, Danica DL and Cheryl McCulloch.
Hello.
Hi, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Do you want to give us a bit of background of each of your your journeys in football a little bit? I know that you've obviously been in the game for quite some time now, Cheryl. Not to be rude or anything, but you've seen the game grow significantly. You probably get bored of hearing the question, how much has it came on in your time in the game? But how much has it came on?
It's come on like massively. Me and Danica both kind of grew up playing football around about the same age. Probably similar to Danica, playing with boys teams, etc. Like, was the only girl in the school team, and I wasn't actually allowed to play until the teachers had fought for me to be able to play in the team. There wasn't really any women's or girls teams about when I was younger. It wasn't until I went to high school that I started to play women's football or girls football, and that was with Baillieston, and that's where I probably met Danica when we were rivals. Danica played for Kilmarnock, and that was us kind of at that age. But certainly from then to now, it's massive to think that players can have a full-time career from it and go down and play in England or abroad or wherever and play for teams like Celtic, Rangers, Partick Thistle, etc. It's huge, and for me anyway, as a young girl, I would never have thought that would be able to happen or be able to be an aspiration or dream.
And yourself, Danica?
Yeah, so obviously like Cheryl said, we played probably our youth football at boys teams, didn't we? So at school as well, and then as the game developed, at the time you obviously move into like women's football right away back in the day, and then you're working your way up towards obviously where we're at now. But I think the changes in the game are significant, where you've got some teams that are part-time, you've got teams that are now full-time, and I think for us that's great of what you're seeing already, and there's so much more opportunity than probably what we had when we were under nines growing up. So yeah, it's great to see. So I'm sort of kind of that helping side of the women's team, sort of grow that, grow a little bit of the commercial side while still helping out the women's team and that side of things. So there's a lot still to be done. There's a lot still to be done for us, but I think how the game's grown, it's not going away. So I think we're all just moving forward with it. And yeah, so here we are.
And Partick Thistle specifically, you're both there. What's your journey been like at the club, and how is everything going with the team at the moment?
Go you go.
Well,
you're playing so.
Well, I initially joined just for 8 games to help them out, and here I am 4 years later. It's like a bit of a running joke. I'm like 8 games, and then 4 years later I'm still here. So I think that just epitomises the club as a whole and the family kind of atmosphere of it. And once you're in, like you feel like you're part of it and you want to progress the club and everything around that. So certainly it's been a huge journey. I joined when they were looking to get promoted into the Women's Premier League. They did, and then from there they progressed year on year, cup finals, top 6 finishes, etc. And you just see the growth and the push that the club are trying to make to make it more professional and certainly raise the standards of the club.
And how often are you actually training at the moment? What's the system like? Because I know obviously Rangers, Celtic, they went fully professional, but there's a lot of hybrid sort of models. What's the setup at Thistle like at the moment?
So we're training Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights. We also have gym sessions prior to the training sessions, and then we have a Saturday session as well. So potentially 4 sessions throughout the week with gym sessions included. And obviously a lot of our players work full time as well as that. So it's trying to balance that between full time work and also accommodating the players to play and train as much as they possibly can to maximise the performance on a Sunday. Certainly not as much as what maybe the professional teams would train maybe, but certainly trying to push for as much as possible to kind of mimic that.
And like we mentioned, a lot of these top teams are professional. There has been a bit of a gap between maybe the top 4 or 5 in SWPL and the rest of the league. Do you think that's due to them having this extra time in the field? Do you think that's creating a bit of a gap between the bigger sides and the bottom sort of half and maybe the 6th place team?
I think for me personally, I think you can see that there is obviously the top teams, they do break away at some point in the league, and then obviously down the bottom, it's a lot closer. But you do get the odd game where there's a surprise in the league, etc. And any team can take points off anyone in that league. But I would say year on year, it does get harder if you're not pushing the standards and trying to train more and elevate anything you can, nutrition, gym, etc., to push your team to the limits, because those professional teams are doing that day in, day out.
And how do you feel the women's team is, received by the club as a whole? Do you feel that you get the adequate support? Do you feel that you're given the chance to improve and thrive from the club itself, or do you feel there's still maybe a priority on the men's side of things?
What do you think?
I'll take this one. I think there's a bit of both. Even from the last question, I think that the differences is with the break and what the league is, the structure is of the league now. There is a split. So I think in the men's game we can all see there is a difference between the top clubs, and their investment is pretty similar. Aberdeen have just had investment. You've got obviously Montrose are similar to us. Motherwell have got the affiliation with the men's. So there's still that aspect that still needs to grow. So yes, of course, we have to do things a little bit different. We have to look for investment in other places and to support the women's game for us to get there. So that's still a growth. And as you can see with how much yesterday for the men's club, playing against Celtic that's a good thing for the club as a whole. So that relationship is building. I think we can only grow together. So if we align ourselves to make sure that we're growing together as a club and as a whole, then there's opportunity there for us both to grow as well.
I wanted to just touch on something that I'm dead interested in, and it's more from the aspect of the difference between the men's and the women's games in the sense of training. I've got a running background, and I had an interview with a girl a couple of years ago who's a coach, and she coaches just women. And she said, I tailor the entire program around things like the time of their month and stuff. These are things that guys don't really
They don't have to
understand
think
or
about it,
consider.
yeah.
We don't have to think about that. Is it similar in the women's game in terms of the football aspect?
For sure. I think 100%, because I think even, like we were saying, we do have to manage loads. For Cheryl, who's in the fire service, like her load has to be different compared to other players that maybe have different types of styles of jobs. So we have to look at these things. We have to have trackers when their menstrual cycle is happening, because that then becomes a high percentage rate of injuries in training and in games, that when that is happening, there's more of a risk, there's a higher risk of that happening, because obviously mechanically our bodies are differently built than you guys, and that's the effects that we do have. That is something you don't have to think about, but we obviously have to try and take care of that as well, and sort to manage the players a little bit more so.
Yeah, like we obviously have to fill in questionnaires, whether it's to do with menstrual cycles, that is then whether your sleep, etc., your load, your mood, etc., and then from there we can kind of track what we're doing throughout, and especially throughout the gym, we'll have different adaptations depending on your menstrual cycle and things. And then I think even the coaches could probably just tell with the mood in the camp if everyone's a bit moany or whatever else that week. But certainly, yeah, I think that's something throughout the women's game that's only getting better, as well as more clarity on that, and hopefully injury prevention also comes with that.
And just in terms of coaching, honestly, I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was that said it to me. I had a female footballer say she actually preferred being coached by male coaches, which was strange to me. Do you find there's any difference between the coaching? Because you still see, obviously in the men's game, there's very few women's coaches, but there is quite a lot of men's coaches in the women's game. Why do you think there is that crossover there, but not the other way?
Could be numerous things, to be honest. I think, like, at the end of the day, like, I think we are in a sport that is growing. Like, I mean, I think we can all go historically, men's football's always been there over women's. So if you look back to the times of when the first women's Scotland player was ever noticed, so we're still looking back at those times, like, why were they not noticed bigger? But I think for both our experiences, I don't think there's many differences. You might have maybe a sort of different approach of how they coach, and maybe it's different experiences, but actually we have different players and friends and that have different coaches around the game, so they might just have different qualities that the men's don't have. Or do they have more of a personal approach? Maybe not, because I think it's probably just depending on the person and how the manager is, what they want, their style of play, and how they want the team to perform. So I don't think personally there's much, but I don't think the transition could still be there in the future. I don't think that should be discounted, if you like, because at the end of the day we are growing to get experience in both sides of the game. So
I think there'll be more opportunities as the years go by for players that are maybe now more in a professional setup once they finish, to then go into coaching, management, etc. So I think it will just be a case of, through time, that'll be implemented more, where you'll see more women in women's football coaching, and certainly into men's as well. Like, you see managers like Emma Hayes, etc., like that, have really broke the mould with that kind of profile, and I think that'll continue.
How long do you think it is before you see a woman coach in the men's game?
Well, I think obviously,
mentioned Emma Hayes.
Yeah, like obviously Shelley Kerr has done that in the men's side, Scotland here, but I think that's obviously a one-off. It's not like there's been loads, but I do think that will happen more often. I think you will see. I don't know whether it's in the next 5 years, next 10 years, but certainly I think it will start to progress.
And a question I had, Cheryl, you obviously had a bad injury yourself, and now in the men's game you get all your sort of rehab and everything done. Were you supported by the club? Were they able to support you in your recovery, or was that something you had to kind of go through by yourself?
It's very difficult, because I think the club did what they could at the time. It was a few years ago now, and obviously I'm a full-time firefighter, and it did affect obviously my job, etc. at the time. But the club at the time didn't have the financial backing to maybe put me through private insurance, but certainly what they did do is do what they could in terms of put me in the direction of a specific surgeon that would give me the best chance to get back playing football, and obviously appreciate that. But they didn't have the tools that maybe a Celtic or a Rangers or Hibs, Hearts, whoever had at the time, that they would maybe get private insurance, etc. at that time. but certainly like they are progressing, as we say, like they are trying to do everything possible to make sure that doesn't happen again and support players in the future who get injuries.
And you obviously touched on being a full-time firefighter. If I'm not mistaken, I believe you were at Celtic when they started to make the transition
Yeah.
to full-time. Was that something that you worried, because you obviously have your career and you're making this transition? Was that something you thought, I'm not going to be able to make this transition, or was it something you would have welcomed?
Well, I was there when the transition happened, and I played, I think, with Celtic maybe for about a year in that time. Obviously, COVID and everything else happened at the time, so maybe not as much. I just found it really difficult because I was maybe coming off night shifts, doing maybe a 14-hour shift, and then going and trying to do the exact same and replicate full-time playing. Well, girls maybe had a full night in their bed, and I found I could only sustain it for so long to the point of burnout, and I was like, there comes a point where you're like, well, I can't, I'm 30, 31, 32 at the time, and I'm like, I can't give up a full-time career for maybe a year or two of full-time football. So that was a personal decision for myself. But certainly, if I was younger and I was 18, 19 at the time, I would have grasped that opportunity, and I'm sure like Danica would have been the same with that, yeah.
And Danica, you touched on earlier that you're doing a lot of commercial work, looking for sponsorship for part of it. Have you found any sort of obstacles in that in comparison to maybe what people looking for sponsorships in the men's game get? Is there any sort of, I don't know, old-fashioned attitudes around you're running into?
A bit of both, to be honest. I think like there's two sides of it. I think that we don't have to keep comparing to the men's game. I think like first of all, we are a different way of doing things, and I would probably actually say for investors or sponsors there is more opportunity to be seen, because you're not just supporting football, you're supporting potentially a pathway for girls and women coming through. So I think yes, there is that narrative of men's supporting sort of women's football, but actually the way things are going, there's huge improvement. There's more televised games, there's more people viewing, there's more fans coming. So obstacles, yes, are still there. We can't deny that, but there's still plenty of opportunity. So actually what I'd say is just welcome the conversation, because there's more that can be done. And if it was your sister or your niece or whatever it may be, you wouldn't want to stop them playing just because they don't have money in the game. So there's definitely a bigger conversation that could be had for it.
So you're talking a little bit about stopping, that kind of aspect of encouraging them in the game and in the money side of it. I'm currently on a waiting list to get my hip fixed. I used to be a runner, and I've had to take a significant time out because I don't have the money to do it privately.
Yeah.
There's obviously discussion about insurance now. Can you touch a little bit on? I know it obviously is, we were talking obviously prior off camera about it, but can you tell me a little bit about that issue that's kind of came about?
I think again, it honestly just comes down to the investment. So right now, obviously, there's so much research and so much studies about ACL injuries. Like we all know that that's a big part of the women's game, the dynamics of the women's body compared to men's. It is different, right? So I think now I think the stats are something like one team per season is going to happen to at some point. So I think with the insurance side of thing is to actually give them cover, knowing that that's okay, that you'll be okay, because actually for whatever it costs per month per player, then they know actually, even though if we're part-time at the moment, because obviously the team have got other jobs and or studying or whatever that is, that we can cover the cost for that. And I think again that comes back to the investment within maybe the club you're already at. It might just be the investment in the affiliation with the men's team if you're aligned and stuff like that. But I think again there's still opportunity to be able to cover that, because there's a bigger part. You're supporting the risk of that, because I mean the players will tell you we do it for the love of the game. Like they love this game, they want to win, they want to be in the top six. They want to compete, but these little things are sometimes in the back of your head. Of my training load, I've got work and I'm turning up to training and stuff like that. So I think it does come down to cost, a lot of it. But I think it actually would give peace of mind if that was another conversation as well. So
yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a very enlightening conversation. I don't know about you, Jack, but it's been great. Thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I'll say Motherwell will get their first win.
Oh, you beat me to it. I was going to say Motherwell win as well. Livingston and Rangers on the Sunday.
I believe that will be the worst game of football anyone's ever seen. But I do think Rangers, just due to the low averages, need to get a win in the league eventually. I think it'll be a scrappy win.
Yeah, I think so too. I think everyone made a big deal about them saying Hibs were going to beat them, and that made me think even more. Actually, I think Rangers might take this.
Yeah.
So I think
they've spent enough money.
Yeah.
Surely they have to get a win eventually.
Listen, Livingston is a hard place to go to. They're a difficult team to play against, a dead physical team.
The
But
pitch.
the pitch, we can't say that enough. But definitely Rangers, I would say. I think we'll take that one. So yeah, that's all from us here. That's all from us on Football Voices. Please do write in with any questions or feedback. Please write to us, subscribe and share. You can find us on all social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and TikTok. We'd also like to thank Charlie's Law for hosting us this evening in Mulgai. I've been Aidan Gilbride.
I've been Jack Cranmer.
We'll see you next time.